Friends, it seems like everywhere you look these days, the world is on fire. And I'm not talking about global warming, though that's a real scorcher too. I'm talking about war. Real, live, shooting at each other kind of war. Remember when we thought the 21st century would be all flying cars and self-cleaning ovens? Turns out, we forgot to factor in the whole humans are really good at fighting thing. From the blood-soaked streets of Ukraine to the endless conflict in Israel-Palestine and the shadow war simmering between Iran and Israel, it seems like peace is a dish best served. Well, never. We're living in an age of never-ending conflict where headlines scream about death tolls and displaced families, and the only winners are the arms dealers making a killing, pun intended, sadly. But here's the thing, folks. War isn't just some abstract concept we see on CNN. It's not a video game where you can hit reset when things go south. It has real consequences, real victims, real stories that'll break your heart. So let's take a closer look at these conflicts, shall we? Because if we don't understand what's going on, how can we ever hope to stop it? Remember that whole David versus Goliath story? Little guy takes on the big bully and wins? Well, the situation in Ukraine is kinda like that, except Goliath brought a whole bunch of rocks, and David's sling is running low on ammo. It's a classic case of big country, Russia, deciding it wants its neighbor's stuff, Ukraine, and not taking no for an answer. See, Russia's been a bit grumpy about NATO. That's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, basically a club of countries who promise to have each other's backs if things get rough. Russia sees NATO expanding eastward and thinks, hey, that's a little too close for comfort. So, when Ukraine started sniffing around the NATO clubhouse, Russia decided to teach them a lesson. And by lesson I mean a full-blown invasion. Tanks, troops, the whole shebang. They figured it would be a quick in-and-out job like grabbing a gallon of milk at the bodega. But Ukraine, bless their brave souls, decided they weren't going down without a fight. And so here we are, stuck in a brutal war that's dragging on longer than a Real Housewives reunion. Alright folks, buckle up, because this one's complicated. We're talking about a conflict that's been raging for decades, with roots going back even further. It's a story of two peoples, both claiming the same land, both with legitimate grievances, and both trapped in a cycle of violence that seems impossible to break. On one side you have Israel, a nation established in 1948 after the horrors of the Holocaust. They see themselves as a safe haven for the Jewish people, a place where they can finally live in peace after centuries of persecution. On the other side, you have the Palestinians, who were living in the same land when Israel was created. They feel displaced, marginalized, and understandably frustrated. Over the years there have been wars, intifadas, uprisings, peace talks, and everything in between, but the core issues remain unresolved. Land, security, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. Possible? Maybe? Easy? Not a chance. Ever heard the phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Well, Iran and Israel take the opposite approach. They're like two scorpions in a bottle, circling each other, stingers poised, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Now, they haven't gone full-blown war on each other, yet, but their rivalry plays out in a bunch of other ways. Proxy wars, cyber attacks, and a whole lot of trash talking. Iran doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist, and they're buddy-buddy with groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, who aren't exactly sending Israel birthday cards. Israel, in turn, sees Iran's nuclear program as an existential threat, and isn't afraid to flex its military muscle to keep them in check. It's a dangerous game of chicken, and one wrong move could send the whole region up in flames. Section 5, the human cost more than just numbers. Alright folks, time for a reality check. Because behind all the geopolitical chess moves and fancy military jargon, there are real people caught in the crossfire. Innocent men, women, and children whose lives are shattered by bombs, bullets, and the brutal realities of war. We're talking about families ripped apart, homes reduced to rubble, and futures stolen. We're talking about millions displaced from their homes, forced to live in overcrowded refugee camps, uncertain of what tomorrow holds. We're talking about the psychological scars that linger long after the fighting stops, the trauma that echoes through generations. Section 6. Profits of war? Who benefits from the chaos? Now you might be thinking, this war thing sounds like a real downer. Who in their right mind would want this? Well, sadly some people actually profit from chaos. I'm talking about the arms manufacturers, the defense contractors, the folks who make a killing. Again, terrible pun, I know, selling weapons of war. Every bullet fired, every bomb dropped, every tank built means more money in their pockets. It's a sick and twisted system where human suffering translates to corporate profits. And as long as there's demand for weapons, there will always be someone willing to supply them. Section 7. Can we break the cycle, the search for peace? So is there any hope? Can we break this cycle of violence and create a more peaceful world? Well, it's going to be tough, folks, but I'm a firm believer in the human capacity for good. We got to start by addressing the root causes of conflict, poverty, inequality, lack of education, and political oppression. We need to invest in diplomacy, dialogue, and conflict resolution. We need to support organizations working on the ground to build bridges between communities and promote understanding. And most importantly, we need to raise our voices and demand better from our leaders. Section 8. The future of war. Technology and terror. Now, I hate to end on a downer, but the future of war is looking pretty darn scary. We're talking about autonomous weapon systems, killer robots, and cyber warfare that can cripple entire countries with the push of a button. It's like something out of a Terminator movie, but way less cool. And then there's terrorism, which thrives on instability and fear. It's a global threat that knows no borders and preys on the innocent. We need to be vigilant, folks, but we also need to be smart about how we combat it. Because more often than not, our heavy-handed responses only serve to create more terrorists. Section 9. Conclusion: choosing hope over hate. So there you have it, folks. The world's a messy, complicated place, and war is one of the ugliest things we humans do. But it's not inevitable. We have a choice. We can choose hope over hate, diplomacy over destruction, and peace over profit. It's not going to be easy, but hey, nothing worth fighting for ever is.